Hello guys, welcome to Jess Bright's talk for Industry Week. Hopefully we're having a good day so far. Do remember, if you are taking any photos this week, put the hashtag in IW23 and then you're in a chance of winning a lovely prize of a cash card at the end of this week. Make sure if you aren't booked onto any of the talks that are happening for other departments or for potentially your department, please do make sure you're going onto the Industry Week website and booking those at your earliest sort of convenience. There's some really cool stuff happening and it'd be a shame for you to kind of miss out on that, so try and get to as much of this week as possible. There's some really exciting stuff coming up towards the end of this week. If a fire alarm does go off, it is not a drill, so if you can navigate the way to the nearest fire escape for me, they're all sort of signposted by signs above the doors, and if you can head outside of Metronome to Brook Street, that is our fire assembly point. So without any further ado, we have wonderful Jess Bright doing a talk on her creative journey, as well as some examples of her work, and all of the brilliance that is Jess Bright. So without further ado, round of applause for Jess.
Hi, well, I'm Jess, and I'm going to be talking today about a few things, but first of all, I'm working as a freelance designer currently, but my career has gone from doing graphic design not in front of uni, then working in design agencies, transitioning to in-house design, working with businesses, and then moving to freelance. So I'll cover all that in my talk. So currently I'm a freelance designer. I've been fully freelance for about 4 years now. But when I'm going to what I'm working on, I was kind of doing freelance a few days a week anyway, because I kind of transitioned out of a full-time job to freelance early on. But I mainly focus on working on branding and illustration now, and I also do some mural and like this stuff all over the place. But my main specialisms are branding and illustration. Examples of my work. Big one in Nottingham that you might have seen. That's been on Broad Marsh. It was covering up one bit and knocked down and then moved around again. It might be a permanent fixture, but I don't know yet. They're kind of working on it where it might live, which would be cool. I also have a permanent one at Binks Yard, the Jessie Boot and Florence Boot mural, which I hand painted. And one at my co-working space is at the bottom corner. So they're the hand painted ones. I work with AO and some local marketing agencies and some more freelance work, like illustrating causes and things for International Women's Day yesterday, and some brands and illustration that were kind of like murals and illustration. So there's a good mix of things, and it's also a good point to think that you don't need to figure out what you want to do yet, and you can work on lots of different things, because it all falls under the umbrella of design, so you can kind of work on what you want to work on, really. So the main thing I was going through is my time at Trent, because I know some of you will be going to Trent or other uni courses, but they're all kind of, you'll get to work on the same things. The lessons learned from those, and kind of the keys to success that you can carry on, well, can start at uni and carry on through into agency life or any other area of design you want to go into. My time at agencies, which was shorter than anything else, most of my work was in-house and now freelance, so kind of talking about the differences between those and the kind of work you can expect to do and what I'm doing now. So this is kind of my timeline. I think I graduated in 2012. It could be 2011, but I'm not 100% sure anymore. So that's when I graduated, and then I went to do design agencies, because that was kind of what I felt was the standard. It's like you'd graduate graphic design, you went to design agencies, and you worked on big brands, because that was kind of thought what you did. But I decided that wasn't for me. I moved to in-house, and that was better fit for me. And now I'm freelance, and then since 2020 I've been fully freelance, so we can go through all those when we get to those bits. That's me, graduating Notts Trent Uni. So when I actually applied to uni, I got rejected my first time, so you're already going to be ahead of me if you get your place, which I'm sure you will, so it's fine. But that first year I didn't really know what to do. So I went out and I did get a design job, but it was kind of design job in name only. And then I reapplied and it was fine. And then I started my design journey from there, really. But usually at Trent, there'll be loads of different things you can work on. Like, it's under the umbrella of graphic design, but if you wanted to work on an animation project, work on a packaging project, branding project, you can tailor the briefs that you get to suit what you want to do, and it doesn't have to be always branding or always illustration. Like, I did quite a lot of things. I did a lot of branding projects, I did packaging projects. I even did a little bit of animation, but decided early that was not for me because it takes a long time to animate stuff, and I'm quite impatient. But generally, they'll offer you like 2 or 3 briefs that you can pick from, and you can tailor those to what you're looking for. Some of them are like, what they are, like you'll get the Penguin book briefs and things like that, which are just there, but you can pick what you want to do. Some of the examples I worked on, we had to do a modern branding for a funeral care home, which was fun. Some people got like skip hire, things like that, so it wasn't all like the glamorous branding jobs of a startup with like a really cool product. You had to kind of think about it more conceptually and get your ideas across, rather than having something initially that looks cool to start with, and you can it's kind of easier. There's also more conceptual ones as well, where we had to make an item that represented a person of a name that we got out of a hat. I got Lady Gaga, and at the time I didn't like Lady Gaga. So all the things I made were just showing my dislike of her, because I thought she was a dick, was the main theme of the presentation. I thought she was a dick, so everything I made was kind of like, make your own Lady Gaga, and everything you made, like, it'd be a dot-to-dot book, a little Lego thing, they all just made dicks, and that was that was my project. So yeah, it didn't feel like you need to censor yourself in any way or not show your personality or your real thoughts. You don't have to make something that's totally polished. It's more of like, your thoughts and ideas are the most important part of the project, especially early on. So that's something to remember. There's loads of things to make your ideas look good, especially now. Like, there's probably like 3 mock-ups that existed when I was at uni, and we all use the same one. But now there's kind of like loads of mock-ups and everything, so you can make your work look better than it is, which is good, but I think everyone kind of needs to see better ideas presented good as well, not just kind of average ideas. So definitely focus on the ideas. These are some of the questions I had like at uni and when I left. So on internships, I did do some internships. It was in the time internships were unpaid, so I didn't do loads. But for me, they are good. You get those connections with people. You can kind of test the waters of where you want to work and kind of get an insight into the projects. But a lot of the time for me, they give you like a special brief for interns. So it's not like you're working on anything proper, but you will get feedback and stuff. But I think there's better ways to use your time. Personally, for me, I can only give you my experience, obviously. But if you're not happy with your portfolio, which I wasn't on some of my projects I did when I left, I went back and redid them, because some of the projects, going back to the ideas, in like my second year, were like solid ideas, but obviously I didn't have the skills to make that idea look good at the time. So it's important to look back through your work, because sometimes you will have solid ideas that you can like finesse in the future when your skills get better. So it's best not to discount any work and kind of look through it. Finding a job, it depends on what you're looking for. For me, out of uni, I had a part-time job at uni, and I gave it up in like the last half of my final year, so I had no money at all. So my job was basically, criteria was just in design and giving me money. So I didn't really have that dream job holding out thing, but you might do. You might love one agency, you might think their work is just amazing and that's the only place you want to go with. And that's fine, you can build to go towards them. And that might be through interns, it might be through just connecting with them. But if you don't feel like you've got to hold out for your job, because you can just move. You can just move. I've been in some jobs 6 months, I've been in them and they're not right, and I've moved. It's not really a big deal. No one really is bothered by that stuff anymore. But doing a master's, I don't know anyone that's done a master's in graphic design, to be honest. I think partly because you have to do a lot of writing and the dissertation was bad enough for me. So I just wanted to go out there and just start doing the work, and that's what I did. So I don't think you need to do a master's to be doing graphic design at all. And about specialisms, a lot of the briefs obviously will tailor towards certain specialisms, but you don't feel you need to stick to one. And sometimes there will be pressure to pick one. Like I know when we were at uni, it's like, oh, you should pick a specialism so your portfolio is a bit more consistent. But I think at that age, you don't know what you're doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I kind of left it quite open. So you don't need to specialise, in my opinion. I'd say for an agency hiring someone out of uni, the more diverse your work is, as long as you have good ideas that are shown, it doesn't really matter if you've got a branding project, an animation project, or anything. You don't need to worry about it. But you can be your own specialism is my best advice. The only thing that makes you stand out is you being yourself. Like there's so many things now with kind of Instagram and Reels, you see it now, like people make something cool and then you see a video of someone watching and reacting to something cool or remaking something, and it's just like endless. So the best thing you can do is just have your own ideas, and that's your work will be different because you've got your own personal experience, your own viewpoints on anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be something that deep, but it might be from your personal experiences. So the best advice is just to specialise in being yourself, and how you show yourself in your work would be the best advice for me. You can kind of figure out what you want to do doing that by showing your ideas, but ideas and being yourself will always trump any kind of specialism. Here's another selection of my work. As you can see, not a lot of it is the same, but the common thread throughout is I like to do hand-drawn stuff, but even if it is like clean vector stuff, I like to have fun with it, be it like in the copy of the marketing one in the corner. That was like more playful. Working with Eon on their wildlife corridor was more colourful, which I like as well, but also issues that I actually am bothered about, which is like environmental stuff, which is why I got that work essentially. And that's kind of translated more through just experimenting with hand lettering and branding as part of a one project and illustration. So there's kind of three, what could be separate specialisms, kind of rolled into one project. But they're only in like small pieces, so it's kind of, you can add those little pieces together. You don't have to be like a full-blown hand lettering specialist. Like there's a lot of people who are better at me at hand lettering, like no doubt. But if I can include it, I feel that gives me something I enjoy, and that's part of who I am. I like to draw my letters and have a more personalised, bespoke brand that way. And go through some keys to success for uni. Flip this over. Yeah, so some things are just quite obvious, like you'll develop your talent and skills at uni. A lot of the skills you'll develop, they're not really, well, they weren't taught as much when I was at uni. Like software, you kind of had to do more of that on your own, but I think like nowadays everyone's kind of using it much earlier on than what we were. Like my college course was, it's probably on par with like more of an arts course, like rather than a graphic design course. So you've probably got a much better foundation on using the software and things that will help you get by, and just working in a proper environment. Your skills won't match your taste. The biggest problem you'll have at uni, and maybe even beyond that as well, is you'll see some cool work and you'll be like, oh, I want to do something similar to that, and that's fine, but you won't get it as good because you're more than likely looking at someone who's been designing 10 years, 5 years even, so you're not going to have the same experiences as them. So it's just focusing on your ideas rather than your execution as much at the start. So this is kind of what I think is important to remember. Your ideas are going to be what carries your work and makes you an attractive person to work with. and your style and your tools you use are interchangeable. Like, I used to use, well, I still do use Illustrator a lot, but I use Procreate a lot more now than I do Illustrator. And my style, it used to be like more of a clean vector style. Now I add like a lot more texture because I'm hand drawing it. So those things have changed, but my general ideas and who I am is the main meat in the sandwich. Got to do the work and be organised. I am shocked by the amount of people who ask me for help, like, because I mentor some people and I give people advice, and they'll say, oh, I'm struggling to get a job in design. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let me look at your portfolio and see how I can help. And they're like, I haven't got a portfolio. And I'm like, okay, well, that's why you're not getting a job. So have a portfolio is the most important thing you can have. And you've got to be good at the boring things of design too, especially if you're working with other people. All the design admin, developing a folder structure and a proper process, it's not fun, but it'll help you find things. And if you work with a team, you'll be a lot more popular to work with than if you're just like scattered folders everywhere and can't find anything. And especially at uni, because you'll have 3 years of work, you need to kind of be able to look through them easily and kind of pick out what you want. So it's good to get that in early, because you will have to like follow folder structures if you're working in-house or an agency anyway. So it's the boring side of design, but it's also super important. Present your work as early as you can. I hate presenting my work. But even if your work, you think this is shit, I haven't done anything at all, go to the crits, talk about it. It's hard because some people will have done loads and you won't have. But that's all, it's part of the working process. You're never, in uni you are a bit more isolated in that sense, like you feel like you don't want to show your work or someone might steal your ideas, but it's not really the case. So when you get working in real life, it's way more collaborative. Like you've been working with loads of different people on the same project. So it's best to start now and get other people's thoughts on it, because sometimes when you think your work is terrible and it's not working, it only needs a tiny change. Like someone could just say, oh, why don't you just do this? And then it's fine. It's just made it work completely. So yeah, you need to get your stuff out there. Be it like just in crits and going to uni and talking to other people there. But yeah, Behance is good to show your work. Instagram is, it's all right. But you put it on there because you feel you have to, and they've got us all like trapped there, but that's fine. But if you have your own, Squarespace is good to have your own. I had a Squarespace site for a long time. It was a bit awkward to update sometimes, but generally it was good. And go to portfolio reviews is one of the biggest recommendations of showing your work, because not only will it help you make connections to people in the industry, you'll also get feedback and help and how you can improve it. So it's all useful advice to get your work out there and just don't hide it away. But it's also important at uni. I had one experience where I started my third year, and one of my tutors, he just suddenly went into super hard mode, and I don't know why. But I was genuinely asking for help because one of my projects was going nowhere. And he was like, oh, I can't give you all the answers. And I was like, well, I'm not asking for it. Like, I'm trying to talk about my work and get something actually done. So that didn't go well with him, but you are paying for your experience. And if you've got a problem with someone, I just went to my other tutors and I said, I don't want my crits with him again. And I didn't have another crit with him. So it's also important to voice any concerns that you have. Like, you're paying for your uni course. If you don't want to work with someone, then don't do it and just let someone know. The connections you make, you might think you've not got many connections now if you were to go move into freelance soon. But you do, like, obviously start small and be humble with it. Everyone's got to start small. Your friends and family there will be paid work through them somewhere. It won't be perfect work, but it doesn't mean that you can't start earning money. Obviously, college and uni tutors will be the next people. People like me, I'll be a connection. So if you ever need any help with anything or you're looking for something, you can message me and then I can put it out to everyone I know. Because with working freelance and moving through agencies, everyone kind of knows each other, especially like in Nottingham. So there's always a good network to pull from. Use LinkedIn. It's, I know, I hate saying it. I feel like it's the worst one, but it's not. Use it as early as you can. It'll get you in front of the people who need to see you, who have the jobs. And yeah, it is just one of the best ones. It's a bit dry, but that's fine. But if you do contact people, be yourself. So these are the main things. Address them by name. Don't do a generic one, because if you get a lot of those, it's off-putting from the start. And focus on the positives. It's super easy. And I still do it now. If I'm presenting, people will be like, oh, what's it? And I'll be like, oh, I've just done this. Or, oh, it's only this. But it's not. Like, I've put a lot of work into it, and I shouldn't speak about my work like that. You need to be more positive about your work. And that's something I'm working on still. So the sooner you can start thinking about it now, the better. And you can just show ambition. If you email someone about an internship, like, be like, oh, my goal is to learn more about working in an agency and getting new skills, things like that. But obviously in your own, what you actually want to achieve. Don't bullshit. We had some people in, it's just to prove that you probably will get found out. We've had 2 instances where I used to work. 2 people came in for the same job. They both had the same work in their portfolio. It was not a group project. One of them stole it off the other, and we found out who it was. So he did not get a job. But you probably will get found out, because obviously you're going to go for the same jobs. So if you're thinking about a group project, obviously if it's good, put it in your portfolio. Just be honest about what you contributed to it, and it'll be fine. Yeah, be observant. Just make sure anything that you like about them. It's nothing worse that even now when I get some like job requests, people don't reference any of my work at all. They're just like, oh, I need someone to do this. And I'm like, you need to like blow a bit of smoke up for a bit, like get my attention. And that's what you should, well, you don't have to like go overboard, but you can just at least reference some work or something that you like about them. And make it easy if you are emailing people. Illustrators, if you email illustration jobs, a lot of them will prefer just a few low-res JPEGs attached to an email rather than a PDF. Or a super small PDF, which is like, literally would just be a tiny page about you, and then just a page of thumbnails for illustration. That's kind of all they want. They don't really want anything else. But for portfolio, if you have a link, that's the best way to do it for design. Don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing that can happen is literally nothing. If no one replies to you, that's on them. And you tried, you asked, and then you can rule them out and go, I'm not talking to them again. Sometimes luck will be a part of it. I know I've had some luck with freelance work. Like, some people will ask me, like, how did you get this? And I'm like, oh, I don't really know, actually. But there will be the people that come out of uni and they will just seem to be flying away, even though you might think they haven't done as much work as you. But that's kind of the name of the game, unfortunately. So there are ways that you can make your own luck, which is good. If you are going freelance or you want to boost your portfolio, either way, I work on personal projects when I can. They usually translate into paid work, which is why I think sometimes doing your own work is better than doing an internship in a way, because you're kind of showing more of your personality and it's something different what they're doing, but it depends on you. The top one was just a branding project I did for myself when I had some downtime into freelance. I decided, I was doing a lot of illustration work at the time, and I thought, oh, it'd be nice to get another branding project in, but I didn't have loads in my portfolio, so I was like, oh, I'll do one on what I want, which is kind of like chunkier type and something a bit more fun. And that like transitioned into like 3 paid projects. from there, just from putting it out there. So it's worthwhile doing it because you never know who's looking at your work. I joined a drawing week for the reduce and recycle one, and yeah, drawing weeks are good because you kind of get those easy prompts that you don't really have to think too hard, but also it will show your personality and your ideas, because your illustration won't look like the original. It will always show something about yourself. So I did that. That was something that I was interested in, obviously environmental stuff. And it just happened that Eon saw with the agency they were working with, and they were like, yeah, we want to do that exact thing, but for talking about what we're doing with wildlife corridors and being sustainable at home. So even though like the brand Eon isn't someone I'd usually work for, if it was just like their normal brand, like I would not work with them to do that because it's not what I want to do. It was something that was like more my style and more of what I was looking to do, like more illustration and more hand lettering, which is what I was looking to improve. And the bottom one is just something I did a while ago now. And I was actually going to delete it off my portfolio, not because I hated it necessarily. It was just kind of like, I didn't think it was as good as some of my other stuff on there, because I just had it in kind of like a big hand lettering section in my site. But like literally a week later, when I was thinking about deleting it, I got asked to do some hand lettering in that style, and illustration for animation for Medichecks, which it wasn't super exciting on the surface of it, which is a lot of my clients, like a lot of them don't seem super interesting, but sometimes they want to do interesting things, and that's where I like to scuttle in and help. So that was good. It was like more playful illustration and lots of like hand lettering on adverts for them, and that turned into like working on about 8 animations, I think, for them. So from those like 3 things, like the branding one a bit longer, not too long though, probably like a couple of days. The reduce recycle one, literally like a couple of hours, and the other one a couple of hours, translated into like 12 grand's worth of work. So it does work. It sounds fake, but I swear to God, the best thing you can do is like do your own projects when you can. So you don't have to wait for permission to show your skills. If you think in your portfolio, you're looking at, you're like, oh, I wish I did more illustration on this, just do it. Just do it and put it in. You don't have to flag it up as a personal project or anything. Like, there's no law against it. It's fine. I never flag my personal projects. So I just treat them as any other one. But yeah, but drawing weeks are a good one. I'd get involved with those if you want to improve illustration, because it's a good way to show your perspective and your unique outlook. It will also help you show your passion. It shows you kind of got a little bit more drive to it. I don't want you to work yourself into the ground by any means, but if you want to work up something, it's a good way to just show more of who you are rather than what you can do as well. Yeah, just go out and visit exhibitions so you can see other people's perspective, because that might also be useful, because when you're working with design, you kind of need to answer a brief in graphic design. Like, it's not always self-indulgent, whereas sometimes at uni it might feel a bit self-indulgent, and with personal projects it's a bit self-indulgent. But ultimately, sometimes you have to work on things like you present something over a couple of options and the client will go, oh, I think I'll go with this one. You're like, oh, no, I want to pick that one. But obviously it's their brand and that's what they feel represents them. So it's always good to learn new things as well, just to help you motivate you. And when you look back, you can kind of see how far you've come. So always be learning new things, be it like just dipping in a specialism here and there. This one is important, deciding what success looks like for you. Maybe to some of you, I'm not successful in your eyes, but that's fine. But I know a lot of people, when they went to uni, they feel like you've got to go to London, you've got to get in the big agencies, you've got to join the grind. That wasn't for me. I got offered a 2-week internship in London when I left uni. It was unpaid. I could not afford to go. If you're in a position where you can afford to go, good for you. If you want to do that, I don't recommend working for free under any circumstance, unless it's maybe for a charity and you've got full creative freedom. If they're giving you a brief and trying to make you work to something, it's not worth it. You may as well work on your own stuff. But yeah, it's get the balance of it. Obviously, when I left uni, I was skint, so I was just like, full money, not bothered where it is. But it depends on what you want. Like, some of you might want to work in a big agency, and that's fine. Some of you might want to work in a big agency, but the type of work is super important. So if they work for like evil corporation, whatever, then you might think, I don't want to work with them, or you don't want to work on that project. But you can also voice that within an agency. Like if a new client comes in, you can say, look, I don't want to work on that client because they're super evil. And they might listen to you, they might not. I'm not going to guarantee they're not going to say, oh, you don't have to work on it. But voice those concerns, because obviously you're working for them, but they need you there as well. I'm kind of more the bottom now. I obviously want money, but I value my free time a lot. And the type of client and the type of work. Like, there's some things I won't do anymore. If someone comes to me and they want a brochure doing for some boring thing, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that, so I won't. But this will change over time. Like when I left and I was at an agency, I didn't value my free time much, but now it's super important to me. So it'll change, but deciding what's important to you will help you. It will stop you falling into the comparison trap. Because if you know what your idea of success is and your goals, you won't look to someone else and think, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that, why am I doing that? Because really everyone's just showing a glamorized version of themselves on social media anyway. We all know that. But yeah, deciding what's important to you will stop you just feeling like shit, basically. Finding where you fit in after uni, be it an agency. I worked at some agencies. I did not have fun. It was super long hours. I didn't really have any kind of fun there. The work wasn't great. It was a lot of cutting out on Photoshop. I didn't like working there. In short, I think a lot of them have changed now, and I think especially with the pandemic, there's a lot more flexibility in work, so I'm not going to be down in agencies, but the positives are that it is a super steep learning curve, so you will learn a lot quickly, and that's good. Like if you did want to do short time, we'll see if it was for you, you will learn a lot, and I do like working with agencies now, but if I work with them now, it's kind of like on my timelines and my terms, which is a lot better for me. Also, like, my personal life affected my decision to leave that kind of lifestyle. Like, my dad got really ill, and it's just kind of seeing him work his whole life, not doing long hours till like 8 or 9, like sometimes we were doing there. But yeah, I just thought, no, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to work this hard my whole life and then retire and then be ill. Like, brilliant. So that was my main reason for doing it. So I moved to in-house. I feel like there's a lot more choice with in-house personally. A lot of design agencies will rag on in-house designers. I don't know why. There's like crap designers everywhere. So, you know, it's a bit unfair, but you might get some stick for doing it. But there's obviously, if you have like a really cool brand that you want to work with, they'll probably work with an agency that works with them. But if you can go direct in-house to them, then you've obviously got a foot in the door, and you can kind of help see what's going on and throw your ideas in there to help them improve that brand. You can work with businesses, which is where I went, and they might be small or large. I went for smaller businesses because I felt like I could make more of an impact there, which I like to think I did. And I prefer it being a smaller team. I feel like when we're in agencies, sometimes it'd be like so many people working on the same project. You were basically just like a resource. Like you could have been anyone. That's what it felt like. Like they could just get anyone in, and someone would just slot in your place. Whereas I think sometimes in-house, in even smaller agencies, to be fair, you're less of a resource. You're more of an actual person. And that's a nicer feeling, to be honest. So I worked in an architect's well, I worked as part of like a marketing thing, which wasn't super exciting, but after like the stress of the agency, it was kind of like a nice relief to work there. And I worked there for quite a long time. But I did move on, and my last job was at an architect's, and I kind of carved my own path a bit in there, which I think you can do in smaller teams and in in-house roles. You can kind of shape your career more like design agency, kind of junior, and then you're midweight, and then you're senior, and then if there's room, you can be a creative director, but obviously not everyone can be a creative director in those spaces. But in businesses, you can carve your own path. Oops. I was part of a small team, and then I led that team. A lot of the people who were there before me worked on like mainly in-house stuff and marketing and a lot of boring stuff, but they had like a whole interior team who would work on like really cool interiors for restaurants and cafes and like student buildings and offices and stuff. So I kind of pushed my way into working with them more. So I was doing more client-facing work. So that made the job better. So if there's any opportunities you see where you can use more of your skills and add more value, just talk to someone, or just go do it. Like, I didn't really ask for permission. I just did it. But it also will give you leverage in the future. Like, if you wanted to leave or if you want more money, you can be like, well, I've been doing this. And it will just make your job a lot happier, to be honest. It's always trying ways to fulfill yourself more. Main reasons I've moved on from jobs is not money. It's more about just having a better balance for me. So for me, on my first nice in-house role, I left because I'd kind of reached the max of where I was, and that's kind of true of why I left my next job as well. I'd kind of reached a point where I'm like, I could literally do this job sleeping. It was so easy. So it was just kind of boring, and when you spend so much time somewhere, you don't want to be bored of doing your work. So I moved, and that's when I joined the architects. And that was better because I was doing more client-facing work, doing more brand, like working on like big murals and things like that. So it was a lot more interesting. But again, that was kind of reached a point where it was not really fulfilling for me anymore. So I did tell them I was probably going to go freelance, and they tried to keep me to stay, but yeah, I ended up dropping my days down, is the end of the story for that. Rather than me leaving, because I was like, do I want to like just go fully freelance when I had no clients or anything. So I did like 4 days a week there and 1 day a week freelance, and then I slowly started to just chip away at my days, which is a good way to go freelance if you want like a less scary route. But a lot of people let you do it, and that's when you can kind of, by carving your own path and adding skills and showing that you are valuable to them, they will let you do that. Like I feel like if I didn't kind of make my job better for myself and in turn give them more money by doing more work that I preferred, they wouldn't have let me chip my days away like that. So it's definitely a balance of showing your value in any place that you work to make sure that, you know, you get that money as well. If you're going freelance, some of you might go freelance pretty soon. I think it's a lot easier than it used to be to go straight from uni because of all just the remote positions, and there's more like decent job boards. Like you don't have to go to Fiverr and whatever to get like crumbs. So if you are doing that, I think there's a decent opportunity for people to do that now. So that's kind of where my opinion has changed on that. Like I would never have recommended anyone go freelance after uni. I think it's important to kind of get those connections as well as just seeing how a real life project works and working with clients. But I think that's important as well, but I think you can get that experience now even on a remote basis. So yeah, but the main things are getting your portfolio up to date, getting some savings is useful. I made sure I had a decent amount, and just knowing that the worst case scenario is you can just go get another job. Because that's the thing you forget. It's like, oh, I'm going freelance, what if it doesn't work? I'm got no money and I'm gonna die. And you're literally just gonna get another job. And you go back to it and it's fine. Luckily I haven't had to go get another job, so I feel like I'm winning. Yeah, and here's me now. That's my home setup currently. I work with my partner. He is floating over there and off the picture. He is a web designer, and he probably wouldn't like me calling him a web designer, to be fair, an interaction designer. So we collaborate quite a lot just through that. If there's a project that needs illustration, things like that, we work together. And if I have a branding project that needs a web, I will lean on him to help kind of build a full package for people, which is kind of what you can start doing at uni. If you're working on a project and you're a brand designer, and you're oh, it'd be cool if we could make a website, then someone's into web design. You can work together to get those things done. You can start building those connections. So then if you did decide to go freelance, you can kind of make your own little mini agency with people. Because I know that Isaac, when he was doing design, he didn't have anyone to build his websites, or he was relying on people he didn't really know, and then it didn't translate as well. But now he's got his own little team. They are their own little mini agency now. And there's a lot of places that are just illustrators and animators, mini tiny agencies, just the two of them working on big things. So if you're into illustration and you know someone on your course who's into animation, as long as they're sound, then get working together as soon as you can, because that's the kind of the real experience of design. You won't be, if you were working on a branding project, you wouldn't be expected to animate it. If you wanted to do that at uni, you kind of would do it, but you'd budget a bit. But if you get someone to help you do it, it can be a collaborative project, because that's kind of how real life works. So that's me at the minute. Also, buy my shit. This is what I spend some of my time doing now. I do my design work and my illustration work, but I also decided I'm going to make some prints, and I sell those. I sell them online. I can look them up, buy some stuff. But I'm also going to look into expanding my skills more and diversifying my income more by licensing my artwork and looking into more wholesale, which I do a bit now, but it's not super out there at the minute. But for now, if you're into illustration or lettering or anything, or just interested in getting some projects, there's loads of print-on-demand sites that you can sign up to and just promote those, so you don't have to worry about having stock or anything. It's a good place to start. It's also a good place to kind of test what people are interested in, and yeah, just a place to get your work out there really, and just see what will work and what doesn't work. Yeah, don't forget to have fun. Uni can be stressful, but you need to make sure you have fun as well. Otherwise, you're going to burn out and it's not going to be fun. But uni is the best chance you'll get to experiment and work with different people. So take full advantage of that. Don't feel like you've got to have some super curated portfolio that makes loads of sense every time you turn the page and everything's the same, and your style is super sorted. Your style is going to change over time. The tools you're going to use are going to change if there's new stuff coming out all the time. So definitely be a trial and error thing. Don't feel like you've got to even have a finished piece at uni. I had some of my projects where it was all just kind of exploration, and I didn't really have a final outcome to show. It was all just kind of a bit unfinished, but it wasn't detrimental to my grade or anything, because I'd kind of done the work to show that was the process, and that was kind of it, really. It was just kind of a mix of this is it, but I haven't really done it at the same time. But it's all about the idea and the concept and documenting that, which is important. But yeah, definitely don't feel like you've got to jump on a computer straight away either. I know we were speaking about this before, about sketches. At uni, you have to be a bit more organised with your process on sketches, and then But for me now, I still do sketches. A lot of the time, they won't make sense to anyone but me. And that's fine. You can still have that at uni. If you have like a few things in there, you're just sketching out ideas and concepts. It's important to document all that because they kind of expect you to do it, but also to help ingrain that process, because that's kind of what you're going to be. You're always going to be sketching stuff out first, even if it's just super rough. Like some of my illustrations, it's just more of a compositional sketch where nothing really makes sense, but it makes sense to me, and then I'll like refine it a bit more. If you do go work in an agency, just maintain balance. There will still be pressure. Like I've worked with agencies now, and there's still pressure for people to do more work than is possible to do in that week. You know, don't burn yourself out for them. I'm not going to be like an anti-work thing here, but I am kind of a bit. But yeah, just do your hours. Do your hours, do the work. Just be good at your job, but don't extend yourself. My general rule was, if I'd messed up, I would stay and fix it. If someone wanted me to do something and I'd seen them like swanning about in the office all day, and then they came to me when I wanted to leave and was like, oh, can we do this? I would say no. Like you can't get sacked for saying no. And that's important to remember, you can't. So do the work, be good, but don't be a slave to any industry. And if you go in-house, you can find, if you see a better opportunity for yourself to make your job more fulfilling for yourself, and it kind of benefits the company as well, then go and show them about it. I actually had to do a presentation about doing more graphic design work externally, and it wasn't fun. And yeah, but it got done, so it's kind of thinking about that. But you can do it in a different way. I didn't stand up and present it. I made like a brochure kind of advertising what we could do. So it doesn't have to be like super intimidating. Yeah, looking after yourself is a main one. I've seen so many people make themselves so ill, and it's just not worth it. So yeah, don't burn yourself out, because you're going to be less. You might think you're being useful by working, but you're going to be less useful when you burn out and you're going to be off for months. Like, people aren't going to be super pumped about it. But also, you might be enjoying a project at uni and you're like, yeah, I'm working on it, and you're working on it loads. There's going to be another project immediately after, and you're not going to have time to recover. So you need to just kind of get that balance early on of kind of looking after yourself, because there's always going to be another project immediately after, even wherever you are. Like, there's always going to be something. So you need to just make sure that you're not absolutely burnt out from just working super hard on one thing. And that's kind of it, really. That's me. And if anyone's got any stuff they want to ask.
Just give Jess a round of applause for me. Okay, just check. Is there anybody wanting to ask any questions? Just put your hands up if there is. Here you go, Gabby.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Let me just say, I love your work on... Yes. I literally stopped. Me with my kids, we stopped for 10 minutes and we were just looking at it when they put it up. So, yeah. Now going on with my questions. So it's this talk about self-made designers or whatever, self-taught designers or illustrators, and then having a diploma. And my question is today worth having a diploma?
In my honest opinion, I don't think design should be gatekeep the way it is. Like, I personally don't think you should have to go and get a degree if you don't want to. But from experience, no one's going to let you in the door without a degree. So it's kind of like that seal of approval that a lot of places need, which is unfortunate. But I think, like, there's a lot of people who are kind of starting now, like on the internet, they're kind of doing their own designs and getting it out there, which is good to see. But that's kind of, if you want to work for yourself, I don't think you'd necessarily need a degree, but you'd have to like put the work in to like promote yourself, which would be a lot, and it's not a guaranteed key to success. Whereas I think like getting a degree and a diploma is kind of an easier in. So it is worthwhile doing, but I do also think that it shouldn't be worthwhile doing, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And now I have another question somehow related to the same thing. You said you went freelance. I think all of us in the industry love doing stuff, creating stuff. I know I hate invoice, contracts. How do you handle that when you're doing freelance? How did you learn how to do that? For me, that's such a big hurdle. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to do that.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's like just asking. Like my first contract, I rented a desk space in an agency when I was like kind of working myself 3 days a week. So I kind of had that connection to people there, and I basically just asked them, I was like, look, I need a contract. Can you help me? And they said, yeah, here's our contract. And then I just amended it to suit me. So really just asking people is the best thing you can do.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions?
Hi, I really appreciate your work. Before I decided to be a graphic designer, I actually took a picture of your work and said to my family, like, that's what I want to do. So it's really cool to see you today. But I just wondered, you've got a really good philosophy of work-life balance. And did you have that same approach when you was at university, or is it just something that you developed over time?
I think I did a bit, if I'm honest, I think I was quite lazy at uni, to be honest. I did go to all my crits and stuff and things that I thought was important, but some of the lectures and stuff, it was like, I think part of it was the organisation. Like sometimes we'd get there at 9 in the morning, and then would there be a note on the door saying no lecture today, and I was like, brilliant. So, but no, I think like that balance probably is something that I've always had, but it was mainly when my dad got ill, and it's just like, you just see like him working so hard, and then what was it all for? So I think it's important it kind of hit home, that did for me. Like when I'm there at an agency at 9 o'clock at night, I'm like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? I'm not even getting paid anymore. It's just like, it just makes you feel pretty shitty when you actually stop and think about it. Especially like, obviously, you give so much of yourself to some businesses sometimes, and then if they hit hard times, you could just be gone. And it's just important to remember that they're just like, it's just a job. It's just a job, and you need to look after yourself more. Because if you worked so hard at a job, and then you became ill, like, have they got decent sick pay? Are they going to pay you? You don't know. So your health is number one, and that's why you need free time, and you just need that balance. And I think it is better now. I think that's probably one of the most positive things that came out of the pandemic, that people who were going to the office every day for 10 years and then we got to work at home for a bit, we were like, yeah, we're not going back no more. And that's kind of going to benefit everyone now, because we've proved we can work from anywhere. And that's better for people who want to stay locally, because like if you want to work in a big agency who's only in London, like for me, my only opportunity to do that was to work 2 weeks unpaid when I didn't know anyone in London. So that was impossible for me. But now it could be like, okay, well, I might come in once a week on the train, and that would have made it work for me. But yeah, but definitely like the main catalyst for the work-life balance out of you was my dad being ill. Like there's no way I'm going to let that be me. Like I'm not going to work myself for somebody else, especially, and then retire and be like, cool, this is my time, and then there's no time left for me. So.
Thank you. And I have another question. You know how now you're doing freelance design and you work with your partner. Do you find it, the transition from being a freelancer, like being an in-house agency to being a freelancer, did you find it an easy transition, or was it kind of doing your own stuff after hours and then building on that?
Yeah, at first it was definitely sacrificing those like more playful projects I'd do for myself for doing client work. In the evenings, and sometimes the weekend, which I always try to keep my weekend free no matter what. But sometimes I work with like people in America, so I had to kind of flip my day around a bit, but I'll accommodate that, but that's not a problem. But in terms of transition to go into it, it was easier for me because I had that initial 1 day a week, and then I went to 2 days a week, and then I dropped even, I think I went to, did I go 2 days a week? I think I went to 3 days a week there. But that kind of shifted with the pandemic as well, because I told them, like, end of 2019, I was like, look, I'm going to go freelance because I don't really feel, like, super fulfilled here. I was like, if you've got anything that you want to offer me, I'm happy to talk about it. And I think that's important as well, to, like, just be open with people you're working with. And they'll help you out. But I think they just basically offered me, like, a fancy title. And that's not something I ever cared about. Or I was always just Jess Bright, graphic designer. I never really changed. So that's the main reason I left. But it was made easier for me because I had that transitional period. And then the pandemic, I was working at home and I got furloughed. So I was kind of like bringing in more clients anyway, because I was going to leave. And then it was pandemic. And then all my freelance work went immediately. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to leave just yet. I'm going to hang on a little bit longer. But eventually they came back. I think it was just the sheer shock of what was going on. People were like, I don't want to spend any money. I don't want to do anything. But then I was getting more freelance work, working at home. And it was just easier because I was at home. So yeah, then I just decided to just leave and do it full time. But a lot of the work will come from people that I already know, which is why I think it's good to get that agency experience or in-house experience. Like, I still work with the people. The job I left, I still work with them occasionally. And some of the agencies locally I did work for, I still work with them now. So you don't have to, like, just because I hated working in there doesn't mean that the work is bad or they're bad people. Like, I didn't leave like see you later and suck it. But I was like, I just left. And, you know, you still have those people. You don't have to burn bridges when you leave. If you want to, then fine, that's cool. I'm all up for that. But you don't have to. You can still maintain those connections. It's not like you end on bad terms. So it all comes back round, like people I hadn't worked with for years. Just announcing your freelance is one of the most important things that people kind of forget. Like, just going on LinkedIn or whatever you use and just saying, hey, I'm freelance. And people are like, oh, right, cool, we know now. And just kind of emailing those people, just saying, oh, by the way, just to let you know I'm freelance. And it all works out in the connections. So.
Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask?
Hello. Over the last few years, there's been a rise in AI coming into design. Things like Canva, to name something obvious. Have you got any hot takes on this?
AI is a bit of a tricky one. I think it can be really useful. I think for illustration, it's awful. I've known so many people, like all the big sites for concept artists, they're just scraping that data, like without consent. You have, I know on ArtStation, if any of you post work there or if you're into concept art, you have to manually go through every post and uncheck that you don't want it to be in an AI data set. And people have got thousands of pieces of work on there. And they're just taking all that data. And I think there's issues with illustration. On some of them, you can literally be like, whatever you want to draw in style of artist name. And that's brutal. Like, you can't do that. You shouldn't be able to ever put an artist name in AI, full stop. But in terms of like design, I know that people have used it for like web mockups. They've just generated like random images and things, which is cool. It gets kind of like more what you want, because sometimes stock images or making your own for just a concept isn't feasible, like on the budget or time-wise. So I think there are like applications for it. But in terms of illustration, I hard pass on anything to AI to do with illustration. It just feels a bit strange, AI, to me sometimes. I feel like, why are we making AI to draw pictures for us? No one's ever gone, oh, you know what I hate doing? Drawing pictures. It's like, we hate like boring manual jobs. Like, I don't know why the focus isn't there. It just feels like they're just trying to scrape the creative industry out of money even more. And it's just like, can't we just have AI, someone to take the bins out and do mundane jobs that nobody wants to do? Like, why are we coming after drawing and art? It makes no sense to me.
Brilliant. Does anybody else have any questions?
Hello. So I noticed, obviously, you spoke a little bit about it in your talk. You have done some motion graphics, and I was just wondering, is there a different sort of process or like a different way in which you make assets that you intend to sort of be animated, whether it's by yourself or by someone else in the team? Or do you design everything like in the same way, or do you design differently for animation?
I've worked with a few animation, but usually they kind of tell me because it's a bit foreign to me still. But I just generally just ask the question. Like, I got some illustration jobs to be animated, and I was like, I've never done that before. But I kind of just, it's the best thing you can do is kind of just say yeah and just figure it out. They'll help you. Like the agency, I was just like, what do you need from me? Like, if I draw this, and they're just like, just need to make sure X, Y, Z move. Mainly it's people, so they'll be like, make sure the neck's like moving and stuff. So it's just about that organisation as well, like creating the layers and labelling what stuff is. Otherwise, I learned quickly animators do not like it. So, but now I know, so it's fine. But sometimes, yeah, it is just a case of asking, because I had one where it was like more the hand-drawn style one that I did, and I was like, oh, I don't really know how to like vectorize that piece to animate it. And they were like, oh, it's cool, no, you could just have PNGs. And I was like, you can animate PNGs? I had no idea, but apparently you can. So it's just a case of asking what's best for them and accommodating that. It's never too wild of an accommodation, to be honest. So it doesn't disrupt the process too much. It's just kind of like, the only thing that's different is kind of making sure there's moving parts and making a neater file, because I've got to give it someone else, which is probably my worst trait of being freelance now. I'm like, no one else is going to see this. But sometimes they do, and I have to send it over, and I'm like, oh, sorry about that file. But yeah, it's good to, that's why it's good to maintain a file structure. At the very least, a file structure, please.
Awesome, thank you. Great advice. Has anyone got any more questions? No. So brilliant. Thank you for that, Jess. I'm going to ask just one more sort of cheeky question before we do finish up. Obviously, everyone in here is either just about to head to university or they've started their journey in that regard. Do you have one sort of final top tip based on your time at university to sort of work towards?
I think the main one would be you need to just try everything you can do in design. Unless your heart is set on something, like, I only want to do this. It wasn't for me. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I'm obviously still like floating around between loads of different things at the minute now, but I think that's the thing with design. You've got a good opportunity to explore the whole spectrum of design at uni and decide where you want to go. And you don't have to stay in it for the rest of your life. Like, I started out as a pure graphic designer, and now I'm probably like more illustration than anything, to be honest. But yeah, just experiment away and work out what you want to do. Don't feel like you've got to know all the answers, because I left uni and I didn't know what I wanted to do still. So that's, don't feel like you have all the answers. Like, I haven't got all the answers. I can only tell you what I've been through. But it's not going to be the same for you. But yeah.
Brill. Thank you so much for that, Jess. I think definitely deserves a round of applause from everyone here. Excellent. So thank you, guys. Jess will be sort of staying at the front for a couple of minutes just while we set down. So if you have any questions sort of more on a one-to-one, or when you want to grab Jess's socials, you absolutely can. Just feel free to stick around and head to the front. Otherwise, everyone, guys, that is this talk sort of finished up. So if you want to head back upstairs to the Metronome Atrium, there will be another talk for graphic students in sort of the next half an hour or so. So we'll see you there for Dan Caruso at 2 o'clock.